afternoon to you all on the continent. I have, as usual, we have an exciting guest on the Levi Africa African Dialogues on Homegrown Solutions. Rose, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who's Rose Ssali?
Thank you, Brian. I own a publishing house called Ssali Publishing House. We are based in South Africa, in Johannesburg, and now I'm a ghostwriter, and then I'm also the publisher.
COVID has immobilized, energized, brightened, inspired many Africans. Our governments have responded in many different ways, some in ways that are commendable, others in ways that are regrettable. But all the same, here we are as a continent in this COVID context. And everybody is asking, is there an African solution to COVID?
I think one of the most important things that I've seen coming out of this is the dialogue. For instance, what you're doing in bringing us together in one place to have these conversations. The other thing that I'm finding is we are seeing leaders emerge where we never thought there would be leaders. We are finding young people coming up with solutions because they don't have a choice, or they see things now that they may not have seen, and we're encouraging them and saying, bring it out. We must break down the barriers. Today we have seen that the barriers, the borders, for instance. So can we then not use the treaty that has been ratified but has not been put to use to have transactions? You know, we talked about the herbs the other day. If there's a herb in the Karoo in South Africa that you need in Ghana, why would I not be able to send it there? You know, whatever is coming out of Madagascar, whatever is coming out of Chad, if it's going to benefit someone in Uganda, why should we be stopping this trade? You know, so we must find that which belongs to us that will benefit us. So we must find those things that we know. I mean, I am working with traditional healers. I'm working with sangomas, and sangomas are not what people have believed are witch doctors, or, you know, they know these things. Why are we not using the knowledge that they have, documenting it, sharing it, debating it, and then using what we know that works? You know, that to me, I am driven to have those conversations, to facilitate, to document, to write it in story form, if that will make it easier for people to read and you know, understand it.
So Rose, this is getting exciting. So one of the things when you talk to the medical professionals, they say, because tradition has been adulterated, because there are all sorts of chancers out there who claim that they have a traditional calling to practice medicine, and that you actually do need a set of protocols for the traditional medicine and herbs. How do we support it?
We have to be very careful that we don't merge the lines to where we're taking the tradition and taking it back to the conventional. For instance, when I came back to the continent, one of the things I was really looking for was answers to cancer. I lost my husband to cancer, and we were living in the US. We'd already been there almost 16 years. And I always said, if we were in Africa, I think he would have stood a better chance. So one of the drivers for me when I came back was to make sure I understood as much as I can about cancer. And I stumbled upon a group that's in Uganda almost by default through media. I was doing some research, and I talked to the person in the bureau there, and as we got into conversation, they said, oh, do you know so-and-so? And I said, no, I don't. Now, these groupings of traditional healers have their own protocol. They almost have, they do have a way of regulating each other. So the man I have sat under in Uganda is very senior, and everybody almost defers to him. And then there is almost a second in command. And when it's cancer, when you ask any question, they will say inbox so and so. When it's reproductive health, they'll say it's so and so. So they all know, and there is almost an orchestra that is at play, and it's very, very well coordinated. It's not disjointed. There is no confusion about how they do things. And before we begin to regulate in the conventional way, I would suggest that first we look at what it is they're doing and what is working before we bring our own conventional brand and begin in that way to dilute and confuse what is already working in that space.
So here is what I hear you saying, that they are regulated. The challenge is not so much whether or not they are regulated, it's what we don't know. And the danger of trying to formalize everything in a Western type regulatory framework. But so how does one, because when you read papers in Uganda, in Kenya, in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, across the continent, you hear many stories of people that have been cheated by people who were claiming to be traditional healers, or cheated by people who were claiming to have healing powers, so whether it's faith healing or other forms. And how do we make sure that this desire to deal with the few that are errant does not end up with distorting or undermining what you are describing as a well-organized African alternative medicine platform?
And we just have to really defer and find some of those names that are, like I know who to go to in Uganda. I know who I work with in Ghana. I know the 4 or 5 people here in South Africa, and I know who's good in Western Cape. I know who's in KZN and what they're capable of. So it will take us putting that together and making it available for the greater good, and not thinking that the traditional medicine arena is any different, or there's more evil in it than you would have in the conventional. I think all of them, we need to just be vigilant, but also not to get to the point where we antagonize or make them feel that they're any less than they are simply because of these instances. Yeah.
A lot of African elites by night go to consult traditional medicine, and by day they treat it like a dirty word. What accounts for this contradiction in amongst African elites, especially those who are very senior in politics?
It's also ignorance. I have all my degrees. I have a legal training, and I think I have probably had one of the best. But I'm not shy to say that I'm in training to be a traditional healer. I am, in fact, more proud of that than of my law degree, because I believe I will serve people more in that aspect than I ever could or ever did with my law degree.
As are middle-class Africans, strongly Islamic or Christian, who have been raised up to believe that traditional medicine, now witchcraft, or so how do you do this decoupling in narrative that separates people's perception of witchcraft as evil and their conflation of traditional medicine with witchcraft?
First, we must clear that it's not witchcraft. I'll tell you why. If one has malaria, for instance, and this was prevalent in Kenya, and they would take the leaves and boil that and then cover you and have you steam and inhale that, and you get healed. I don't think that takes away from my being Catholic or Christian or Muslim or any other faith. And it doesn't even take away from my being educated or not educated. It's simply a question of, did it serve its purpose? Did I get healed? But we're taking all this processed stuff when there was all this natural stuff. And that's why, Brian, I say, let's start with our children. Let them understand that this is the good stuff. Yes, take your syrup, but there is an alternative. Let them know that they are proud. This is what your grandmothers took, your great-grandmothers. Let's be proud of this and let the children embrace it. Then they can take their choices later. Yes.
We don't eat our food. We prefer macaroni and so on and so forth. We hardly listen to our own music. We don't read our own books. And sometimes we don't trust our own professionals. So when our governments want solutions, they'd rather look elsewhere for. So when you're looking at this context of COVID, given all the things that you've described and the bits I've added about, we have literally been alienated from ourselves. And the Levi group were to say to you, just give us a 3-point or 2-point action. What do we need to do? A very practical 1, 2, 3 to reverse this trend where we're ashamed of who we are, whether it's our dress, our food, our music, our literature, our art, our faith, our medicine. So how do we solve this? If you were to give us a simple set of practical steps.
The first thing is, let's be proud to be African. Let us, like you said, let's eat our organic foods. Very, very important. Let us celebrate who we are. But let's also really have a focus on our literature. This literature, we must then start writing books that our young children can read, our teens can appreciate, and our older people can be proud of. And let them be narratives by Africans for Africans. Let us tell our own stories. If we write these narratives well, our children will grow up proud of what is African. I never had a question in my mind as to who I was, even living in the US and for over 20 years. I never, in fact, in those years, I never even went by Rose. I went by my African name, and I made sure that they could pronounce it correctly. That's how strong I was. And I wore African clothes throughout. If we can get our young people to have that appreciation, they will never feel daunted by anything.
Our young people don't read. They don't like reading. They don't like long stories. 240 or 140 characters. They are not like you who could sit and listen to a whole Matigari or a man of the people or no longer at ease. So what do we do with a generation that must get a transfer of this pride that you're talking about and self-belief, but a generation that does not want to read or whose concentration span because of so much information overload through Twitter, what do we do? I agree that we must do what you're proposing, but in what form must we package it so that it's digestible for this generation?
The beauty of it is now they are so much in the media and therefore open to being influenced. That's a good part. The podcasts. These kids are constantly listening to something, watching something. So we must then have everything in the medium that they are subscribing to. Let us capitalize on the ability that they have to influence each other. But let's make sure that they are influencing in the right space. Now, we can influence them to a great degree, but we must also listen. If we listen to them, then we will see where the dichotomy is, and we can either rein in or educate them as to where they need to be.
We know how to give instructions, how to tell, how to educate. We have to adjust to this process of young people also having the ability to educate us and upgrade us in many respects, in understanding their world, understanding the continent. To what extent do you think African leaders, African elders, African parents are prepared to listen, to understand, and learn from their own children?
We can only influence these children if, like you said, we're willing to learn from them. Let them be our allies. Even the thinking that, oh, they're one generation, we're another, I have never bought into that. Why? Because with my own parents, we always had, and we, to this day, I'm thankful they're still alive. We have a very good relationship where I learn from them, but also as I gained exposure in many ways, I could come and share, and therefore we grow. We must make our children our allies. It is not this or, it's not either or. We are all in this together, especially because things are moving so fast. There is so much value that can be added by the young people. We've got to engage them.
I love the creative industries. That's a 20 to 40 billion dollar rand industry in South Africa. 12 billion or more in the United Kingdom. It's a lot of money. But here is the catch. In most of our countries, we don't have a 5 to 10 or even 30-year strategy for the creative arts. We don't have an industry to talk about. We don't have appropriate incentives and regulation for people who want to create content, whether they are creating them online, the content online, or creating the content offline. I mean, if you are looking at encouraging young people to write and they want their ideas to go out there, and thank God for the internet, but what must government do? What must African policymakers do? What must African business folk do? Where is the investment opportunity? Where is the transformative opportunity in the creative arts industry?
Are we willing to make this happen? We cannot wait for government. It is too large a ship to move anytime soon. And like you said, we don't have 30 years. We need to move in increments of 5 years. The internet did not take 30 years to change the world. Google did not. Uber happened very, very quickly. Facebook happened very quickly, So we need that must move us quickly. And then everything else then becomes a force behind us.
What is a homegrown solution? We are in COVID and we're all talking about homegrown solutions. Just describe to us, what is a homegrown solution?
A homegrown solution is that which we know, Brian, we know it works for us. If we're talking about from the traditional medicine side, for instance, we know cannabis has worked, and I know I am allowed to speak, especially from South Africa, because it's now legal. That has worked for years. It is not something new. It is homegrown. It belongs to us. It's ours. So that is one. Literature that is African has changed and influenced minds. That is homegrown. Music by our local artists, Miriam Makeba, who many people know as an artist. They don't know that she was in the MK, that she carried an AK-47 and fought for the freedom, both on the stage and on the ground.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. I could talk to you for 2 days on these very interesting subjects. But if you were to have a parting shot, word of inspiration and word of challenge to young Africans out there, to African women liberators and fighters like yourself, thespians, thinkers, creators, innovators, what would your words of parting shot be?
To the African youth, to the African women, to African men, my word is this: we have in us everything we will ever need to make it. We've got it here, we've got it in ourselves. Let us look to ourselves. Let's mine the talent, the intellect, and the knowledge that we already have within the continent. But again, let us collaborate. If we do that and bring together what we have in terms of intellect, in terms of the natural resources, Brian, this continent will rise. It is rising.
I'd like to thank you on behalf of Levi, Rose. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for making your afternoon available. As another Ssali would say, my brother Shaka Ssali would say, keep hope alive. Let's keep the dreams of Africa, and let's keep the innovation and ideas of Africa alive.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.